Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Representative Dan Miller, and you are at the 2 o'clock, one of the 2 o'clock sessions of our Disability and Mental Health Summit this year, which of course is all virtual. So we thank you for joining us. And I have a couple things here to just go over before we start up. First, again, I want to thank our great interpreters like Nick over here, who's been doing fantastic for us to be sure that everybody can hear and participate in the discussion. So thank you for all of our interpreters. They are sponsored this year by our friends at Gateway Health. So we very much appreciate them as well for helping to be sure that we have this capability. I'd also want to be sure to, just to thank all of our presenters, most of which here I'm going to leave for Josie to talk about, but I do thank everybody's time and being part of this. We do hope, of course, this is our 8th year. We do hope to be back next year in person, or at least mostly in person, right? So this is a good format, but we do look forward to being back in person. The key thing about that is that also means that this year we do not have continuing education credits available. It just is not compatible with our technology that we could arrange. So we, if you were hoping for that, I understand, but we'll have to get you next year, not this year. There is a Q&A part of this component as well. So you should have access to the features below. Send the questions in any time and we'll have them ready to go and try and get to as many as we can in the hour that we have allotted. But your questions are welcome, so please do drop them in. The title of this session today is Empowered by Our COVID-19 Experience, the Importance of Your Voice at the Table. And before I again introduce Dr. Josie Badger, I just want to talk about how much I love these types of sessions in particular. We are very blessed and very thankful that we're able to get a lot of great people, great panelists who come, who help us understand an issue or share their experiences. We're not always sure that we always get as many people who have a diagnosis of any type to be part of it. So we try hard to bring in as many people as possible because we need those stories. And it very much is reflective of the sort of nothing about us without us mentality that we all are trying to push more into every aspect of not just government, but also our workplace and lives in general. So we're very blessed to have this group of people who are willing to talk about their experiences. So I thank them and applaud them all. Dr. Josie Badger will be sort of our moderator for this session. I will give you her brief bio again, just in case you didn't get it earlier today. Dr. Badger received her bachelor's degree from Geneva College in Disability Law and Advocacy. She has a master's from University of Pittsburgh in Rehab Counseling and a doctorate from Duquesne University in Healthcare Ethics. In 2014, Josie founded the J. Badger Consulting, Inc., where she provides youth development and disability consulting services for organizations. She is a director of the National RSA Parent Training and Information Center, Technical Assistance Center, the RAISE, which you're going to hear a bit today. She's the campaign manager of the I Want to Work campaign and is the developer of Trail, a statewide advocacy and lobbying training arm. Again, we give a quick little rundown. Josie's fantastic, and she has, believe me, a much more in-depth bio than just this. But Josie, thank you again for being part of this, not just today, but in all the years that we do it. It's always great to have you and to learn from you, and I'm going to kick it to you to take it away.
Thanks so much, Dan. And it is a privilege to be with you guys today. I'm going to ask, as our presenters come on to speak, to just show your camera, but you don't need to do that yet. I'm going to share my screen. Thank you all for joining us. You know what was really exciting about putting this presentation together was the importance of talking about how the disability barriers, the things that we have always known to be problems, are now really coming to light for everyone else. We've talked about social isolation for people with disabilities for decades. We've talked about nursing facilities or institutions and the problems with those, but this brought it to light. And so today I am here as the director, we'll call it, of Trail, which was brand new this year, and I believe was a success in part because of COVID. And so Trail stands for Training Regional Advocates to Impact Legislation. It's a statewide program where I've had the opportunity to get to know some amazing advocates with disabilities across the state, and work with them to help them and empower their voice to talk to change makers and work on legislation. And I can be honest in saying they've taught me more than I've probably taught them. And so this, I hope, will be a great session. I ask you guys to use the Q&A, or put questions down if you're in YouTube or however you're watching this, and whether we get to it during the session or in a follow-up, I would love to answer questions. So I'm going to turn it over to a good friend of mine, Monica, to talk about COVID highlighted the gaps that already existed. Monica?
Hey. And hopefully my camera will come on. Was having some technical difficulties before. Good afternoon. My name is Monica Albert Still. My visual description is that I'm a red-headed, middle-aged white woman with blue eyes that currently look like they have allergies, because they do. I'm wearing a sky blue shirt and I'm sitting in front of a window. I am a disabled adult who, I grew up disabled, so it's a little bit different than from having an accident. I've had the whole experience my entire life. I am a retired community health nurse, and I basically have spent my career keeping disabled people in the community. During my retirement, I've turned to advocacy because nursing has a big part of advocacy in it, and I want to give back to my community. I am also a member of the board of directors of Disability Rights PA. So here we go. Disability justice advocates and allies have been for years warning us, telling us about the gaps in the system. We've talked about that there's barriers for caregivers, that to be a caregiver, a family member caregiver, not being paid often puts the family in poverty. Inadequate availability of high quality home care and community-based services. Home health aides do a very hard job and they're not paid nearly enough. I don't know if people realize that they are paid not much over minimum wage. They don't get benefits. They don't get vacation benefits. They often don't get insurance. And when their family members get sick, they have no one to help care for them. And that leads to the next one of lack of paid time off. And that makes it very difficult to find people to work. If you can go work at McDonald's and get a higher salary and get benefits, you're going to do that rather than do the fulfilling and rewarding work of helping people stay in their own homes, staying in their community. We all knew, and especially as a nurse, I knew that there's an increased risk of infection in congregate work in living settings. Skilled nursing facilities often have infections running through them. It just so happens that this year we all heard about it because the effects were devastating. It's being talked about. I mean, just this past Sunday, John Oliver was talking about home care and community-based services, the need for it, and the problems that the pandemic highlighted in the skilled nursing facilities and assisted living facilities. That's tremendous. I never thought I would ever see that. The impact of social isolation. We've always known that people who stay on their own, don't have people coming into them, they get worse. They get depressed, they get more lonely. That impacts their health care. They get sicker, to be perfectly honest. I had chosen my career apparently when I was 16. I worked my way through nursing school as a delivery girl for a mom and pop pharmacy in Connecticut. And they always joked that I chose my career then because I would go out and deliver medications to people. And the people I saw were elderly and disabled, and they were lonely. And so my boss would get annoyed with me because I would go out for hours. Because not only was I delivering people their medication, I was talking to them. I was spending time with them. I was making sure I was giving them that community connection, which we often don't see. And this past year, all of us have experienced that. And the most devastating part, in my opinion, is healthcare rationing. I recognize that we cannot do everything for everybody, that decisions have to be made. As a nurse, I know what triage is, but it should not be based on someone's opinion of the quality of life of a disabled person other than the disabled person themselves. My own personal experience is that during the pandemic year, I went to the emergency room, and I am used to being asked if I have something called an advance directive to find out if kind of the God forbid something happens, what would you like done? Well, they didn't ask me that way. I'm 55 years old and I am disabled, but I'm relatively healthy. I have an active, great life, kids, cats, a significant other. I have fulfilling work that I do, even though it's unpaid. And the doctor's first words out of his mouth were to ask me if I wanted a do not resuscitate order. I was there for an infection in my leg, not COVID. Nothing cardiac, nothing that you would think that I was going to die imminently. I think that says a mindset that's scary. It's scary to disabled people. People have the wrong idea of what our lives are like. That, there's this narrative about how it's better to be dead than disabled. And we need to change that. We need people to realize that healthcare rationing cannot be based on misperceptions of disability in the community. And that was brought to light in very harsh light this year. And so all these things put together, we've been talking about, and we need to do something about it now. We need to change. We need to do better. And that brings me to the next slide. COVID gave us a new opportunity to talk about these gaps in new ways. And I think a lot of us have been hearing about infrastructure. That infrastructure this week, hot topic. Well, usually when you think of infrastructure, you think of roads, sewage systems, etc. COVID has highlighted and challenged us to have a broader definition of what infrastructure is. For many members of our community, and I mean the broader community, not just the disability community, infrastructure includes the resources, whether they be technology or people, that assist people in living their lives and living their best lives. And in order to maintain a society, all of us are a part of society. This is what we talk about when we talk about inclusion. And in order to be included, you need different things. Imagine if the roads weren't working, or you didn't have a road to get to Pittsburgh, or you didn't have a road to get to a doctor's office. Well, when you think about it, disabled people for many years have not had a road to get to where they needed to go. And so we're talking about now infrastructure as meaning different things like caregivers, making sure that caregivers are adequately paid, making sure that family caregivers have a way of getting paid. Now, whether that's through the Family Care Act, where they can be paid if they need to take time off and care for a friend or family member. That's another cool thing, is that we're redefining what family means. Things are happening where people are getting together and seeing each other as family and helping each other out. And so, we're thinking about what it is that different people need to function in our society. And caregivers are an essential part of that. They're a part of helping people get to work, go to the doctors. It's also defining what it is to be in society, that, you don't necessarily, we all want to work, but if you don't work, that's okay too. The other thing is that it's brought light to access, that basically infrastructure isn't any good unless you can access that infrastructure. So things like waiting lists, the waiting list here in Pennsylvania for home-based and community services is outrageously long, and that that if you can't have access to it, then you can't utilize it. So we need to do better. We need to fund these systems, and we need to let the powers that be, policymakers, and the greater public, that these are the things we need to thrive. These are the things we need to be included in society and to move forward. COVID has highlighted all of that. And that's what I look at as a positive thing about COVID, if you can take anything positive from this. And I'm just going to leave you with one thought. The other thing that COVID has sort of highlighted, that I've said for years, and many disabled people have said for years, every person in this country, in the world, is one accident, one incident away from one disease, one illness, from becoming a member of the disability community. We don't discriminate. Everyone can be part of our community. And so it behooves us all to move forward and to make sure that the disability community can have all the things that they need to be able to thrive and be included in society.
Thank you so much, Monica. So well said. And, I think you brought up so many issues and ways that we are now able to address these changes. One thing that Monica brought up was this ongoing barriers to adequate home and community-based services. This has always been important and is highlighted now as we still are in what we consider a full whole world pandemic. And so now is fortunately a time to share those stories, and also in part because we're living in a virtual world, more of us can come together to share our stories. And so I'm going to turn it over to Christine to talk about what the barriers to adequate home and community-based services have been. Christine? Well, let me start while Christine works on getting her phone and her computer to unmute and show the camera. Many of us in the disability community have been at home more than normal. Most people have been home more than normal. And so we're not getting the same level of services and care that many of us have gotten previously. And so the need for home and community-based services has been shown even
Jody,
more.
can you hear me?
There you are, I hear you.
I don't know where my camera went, but I'm just gonna go.
That's okay.
Hi, my name's Christine Basui. I am a advocate for people with disabilities as well as an independent living specialist. Having a disability myself, I use Homeland community-based services to provide me personal care attendance to help with my daily needs, such as getting in and out of bed and personal hygiene. The pandemic has been a very eye-opening experience. The pandemic has been a very eye-opening experience for me and has shown me that my personal care attendants are overlooked, underpaid, which often leads to a high turnover. Being a personal care attendant for me can often have many physical demands, and I feel that my attendants are underpaid for the amount of work that is required to help me. The pandemic has shown a lack of personal care attendants, which puts me in a difficult situation because I have to rely on them to do my daily tasks. It can often cause me to become emotionally, physically, and emotionally frustrated. I've had caregivers who have came to work for me after a 12-hour shift with someone else, which when they come to me, they're very overwhelmed and burnt out. So sometimes when I ask for assistance, it feels like I'm bothering them because they feel like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing all this work and running myself ragged, and then I need assistance and I'm asking for assistance, and I feel like it just makes me feel like I'm at a lack of control. I've had a caregiver who did not. I asked her to help give me a shower, and she told me she wasn't going to do it at that time because she was on the phone. We got into a disagreement and she threatened to leave me in the shower. I think sometimes personal care attendants don't realize what an impact they have on a individual they're working with. And also there's such a shortage of staff right now that sometimes my shifts are not being filled, so I have to rely on family members at the last minutes, which can cause a lot of stress and anxiety from myself, which I also have mental health issues, so it kind of adds to it. I think I believe that if personal care attendants were paid more, they would feel more appreciative, and we would also have more attendants to help. without the use of personal care attendants, I will not be able to function on a daily basis, let alone be able to live on my own or have a job. I think that caregivers need to be recognized for the type of work that they do, and once they're recognized, it could bring a more attendance to want to work because there's such a lack of caregivers. And okay,
Thank
I'm
you
gonna
so
give it
much,
back to
Christine.
Jody.
Thank you. That was awesome. And for those of you watching, whether you're a paid caregiver, whether you're a person with a disability or professional in the field, you are seeing everywhere people talking about the lack of caregivers or support for caregivers, paid time off to provide that care or benefits. And so this epidemic has brought to light how much our society relies and underappreciates care attendants. As Christine just said, what that means detrimentally on the caregiver, on their families, and on people with disabilities. As Christine said, many caregivers will work 18-hour days because they're not earning a livable wage. And so, as Monica said, go to McDonald's, and that's not right. I can tell you I'm high maintenance, and they deserve more than McDonald's pay. But now it's coming to light. And that is something we've gained from the COVID experience. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jess to talk about now, what does that mean? We have this new platform being virtual, being able to talk to legislators from our own homes. Sometimes, why is it important? Why is it important for each of us to speak up? So Jess?
Thank you, Josie. Okay, if you don't know already, I am a special education teacher and I have been teaching for about 10 years. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade emotional support. And as a special education teacher, I play many roles. And one of those is advocacy, advocating for my students and helping them become better advocates. So like Josie said, bringing this pandemic has brought to light many issues with the disability community has already been facing, but since other people have been impacted by the COVID pandemic, the disability issues are coming to light. So now that we know the issues, it's important for us to advocate for change. And the way that we do this is to educate people about what the problems are. And that's what we are doing here. That's what Christine just did a nice job of doing, educating about what the problem is and empowering people to create that change, to have those conversations, whether they're difficult or not, with other people, express needs, express wants, and create a plan of action. Creating change in our community helps everyone move the arrow forward. And we teach, as an educator, I teach my students to be the best advocates they can be because they know themselves. As a person with a disability, I know myself best and I know what I need. And we have had the privilege through this pandemic and through the TRAIL program to continue our advocacy efforts, enhance our skills, and meet with people like yourself today and sharing our stories. And we hope that through this, you will feel empowered to create change, realize that your life is important. I saw in the question and answer section here that Tessa said that sometimes that people and society don't believe that certain people's lives are worth something when the world sometimes, and not so subtly, tells you that it's not. And people with disabilities, like it has been said before, we are the largest minority. You can become part of the disability population at any time. And advocating for change is what we need to do. Sharing those experiences, developing that rapport, creating community, and coming together in unity to come up with a solution.
Sorry, too many things I have to click. Thank you so much, Jess. I think that really did highlight the importance of sharing, and my heart goes out to the individual who mentioned that in the Q&A. Many of us do feel like people don't recognize our importance, and the nice part is, even now, if we're stuck at home, we have a chance to communicate and show people our importance. And I hate to even say that that's something we should have to do, because we shouldn't, but it's the truth. And so we need to get our faces out there. So I'm going to turn it back over to Monica. One huge piece of all of this is legislation. There are pieces of legislation that are out there right now that could improve our lives, that could improve the lives of caregivers, but many of us don't even know they're out there. So Monica's going to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, you often wonder how you can make a difference. And sometimes you hear on the news or down the line somewhere that starting on July 1st, this is now a law. And you sit there and you wonder, how did that become a law? I don't agree with that. Or, hey, I agree with this. This is great. It's really important that our voices be heard and that we talk about what we can do and to help move legislation forward and to help have a say. There's a saying in politics that if you don't have a seat on the table, at the table, you're on the menu. And I think for all of us, we've seen that to be true. Some of the ways that you can find issues, other than knowing what they are yourself, that I know myself personally, one of the issues that I dealt with over the years was that there was a big push by Medicare to change how they pay for prosthetic legs. And it was the Amputee Coalition, which I was a part of because I wanted information about being an amputee, that basically advertised it and said that there was a call for legislative action. Medicare, basically what they wanted to do was say that if you had a heart problem or had a neurological problem, that they didn't want to pay for your prosthetic leg anymore because you probably didn't need it. For what it's worth, I have spina bifida and I'm also an amputee. And yes, I do need my leg very, very much. And so we got together and we wrote and we talked to legislators, and we Medicare, for if you don't know, has times where you can comment on what the changes they want to make. And so we commented and we were able to defeat that change. And so if I didn't belong to like the Amputee Coalition, I belong to the Spina Bifida Association. I belong to different disability groups. Look around. There's tons of disability advocacy groups. Could be about your specific disability that you have, could be a general group, but they talk about different things that come up because people hear different things. You can Google stuff. Google is great. You can sit there and you can Google what you can find out about, what's coming up in the legislature. Because sometimes when the news and different people hear about it, it's a little bit too late to do anything about it. The other thing you can do is talk to friends, other disabled people. I have found out more things. Actually, I think I met Josie this way, is by word of mouth. And that's very important to reach out and network and find out what's going on. That happens with listservs. And, you can go on different things. Like I belong to United Spinal. and the Christopher Reeve Foundation, and I'm on their listserv and I get information from them all the time. The other thing you can do, you can nationally go on to congress.gov and they will direct you on how to find out about legislation that is upcoming. You can also go on to pa.gov and find out the same thing for our great Commonwealth. And that's also how you can find out about bills. You can find out about bills that way, or you can look at your legislators. Every legislator now has some sort of social media presence. They've always had, different ways to get in contact with them. And they are more than happy to share with you what they're working on. So this works both ways, that you can look at what your legislator's working on, and you can also talk to your legislator about what you would like them to work on. So it's just a matter of doing research and keeping the air out and just being informed.
Thank you so much, Monica. I think that was an amazing way to share how to find bills, how to find things to support. There is so much going on. Dan Miller, I think, said earlier that he had 17 disability bills out there right now that are just sitting in the House. And things move when we, the constituents, we, the people who vote legislators into office, speak up and share our needs, share our lives with them. That's when stuff moves. But finding your voice can be really, really tough. I've told people in the past, the first time that I really public spoke was at graduation in high school. And I literally, it was getting dark, that my eye vision was getting so small because I was going to pass out. And so it takes practice, and it's important to find your voice and your story. So my friend Aaron is going to share his story about where he is in this journey of finding his voice and sharing his story.
Thanks, Josie. I'd like to talk to you all today about what finding my voice and sharing my story means to me. As a young adult self-advocate with cerebral palsy, who's still trying to find his place within society, I understand how it feels to struggle with accepting yourself for who you are. I was always a socially backward kid with low self-esteem growing up. And when I was in middle school, everybody from my class would go out to play for recess, but due to my spastic dysplasia, cerebral palsy, the lack of limited mobility in my legs, I was unable to romp around and play with everybody else. So instead, I would just sit all alone, all by myself on a sidewalk bench just outside the school building until everybody else, until the bell rang and it was time to go back inside for recess. But one faculty member who took an interest in me during this time, for privacy purposes, I'll just call him Mr. B, as in banana. Mr. B was the vice principal and math teacher of our middle school, and he was a very patient, mellow, kind guy, and he was easy to talk to. Every day he would be supervising us kids at recess, and he would see me sitting all alone on the bench behind him, so he'd come over and engage me in conversation. How am I doing? How was my weekend? How are my Boy Scout merit badges going? And what cool movies have I seen lately? What did I do over the weekend? Stuff like that. Just small talk to get me out of my comfort zone, to get me out of my shell, my introverted shell. And I kind of took it for granted at the time, but I can now see that it was a small, profound act of kindness that he showed me, and taking an interest in me like that, just listening to me and talking to me and just getting to know me. I don't remember all the things that we talked about though during those times though, but I still think about him from time to time. I was friends with Mr. B's son all through middle school and high school, and I still think about him too. The moral of this story is that it is important to recognize the people in our lives who make a positive impact upon us. finding your voice is about sharing the things which you are passionate about, and which affect you on some physical and emotional level. But another part is acknowledging and honoring the people who have served as role models in your life in some way. And you can honor them by in the way that you conduct yourself and treat people on a day-to-day basis. And that's part of advocacy. Truth be told, even though I've sought to better myself all my life, I did not fully realize my stance as an advocate until after I graduated college and started volunteering at my local Center for Independent Living. I'm still new within the advocacy line of work, and it has taken me a long time to build up my change-making skills. But thank you, thanks to my two loving parents, my mom and dad, and thanks to all the people that I've gotten to know at my local Center for Independent Living, and also the people from the Trail program. I've gradually but considerably gotten stronger in this regard of getting to find myself and finding out what I'm capable of doing. As far as Josie's Trail program is concerned, I've made significant progress along the way. I've written letters to my local legislatures. I've spoken with Senator Casey's staff about why I think paid leave is so important for everyone. And I've even participated in federal planning and strategy meetings too. And finally, here I am speaking to you all today. People are not born with the knowledge and the skills for making change. It doesn't come, people aren't born with it. And it may not happen as soon as the person may want it to. Advocacy is an art form that must be applied and honed considerably over time in order for people to get better at it. Speaking from my past and present experiences, I can say that nothing worth attaining in this life ever comes quickly or easily. Nothing worth having in this life comes on a silver platter. Rather, it requires a lot of hard work. It requires months or even years of training, preparation, lessons from mentors, and an unlimited amount of persistence and patience. But the relationships which are built and maintained as a result of this, and the sense of personal fulfillment that you can feel because of this, can last for a lifetime. I just wanted to say that if I can learn to be a successful advocate, then I know other people can as well. There are no guarantees in life for anybody, but anybody can learn to advocate, whether you have a physical disability or not. No matter what your personal life situation is, anybody can learn to advocate and stand up for what they want to say or what they believe in. But I just wanted to say that with a positive attitude and a willingness to succeed, anything that you set your mind to achieving is possible. That's all I wanted to share with you today, and thank you for having all of us be here today.
Thank you so much, Aaron. That was great. I think that Aaron just illustrates the beautiful, important message that we're not born advocates. That's a skill that whether you're 37, that's how old I am, or whether you're 18 or you're 73, this is a skill that we develop throughout our lives. And so no matter how old or young you are, it means keep trying, learning, connecting to people in the community that will help you. So quickly, I wanted to talk about bills. Talking that, I mean, I'm a nerd. I like legislation, I know. But there are sometimes issues out there that legislators don't know are problems. They haven't heard from enough of us or lived their life experiences to see the gaps in the system. And so sometimes you're not going to find a bill if you Google it or on a listserv, but that doesn't mean that your job has to stop there. Sometimes, and oftentimes, you have to find allies. You need to talk to people who have experienced similar things, find information and see if there are potential solutions to the issues that you're facing. So this is finding allies. Sometimes when you start Googling and looking at the issues, you're going to find other states or organizations across the country who have focused on this issue. And maybe you can borrow stuff from what those states or groups are doing. But it is possible to use these things to work with a legislator or a group of legislators to develop a bill, to write something that will address this issue. And I'm not going to say that it's easy to find legislator. Not everyone here should call Dan Miller. I mean, he is maybe the most awesome, but we all need to connect with our own legislators and connect to legislators who have supported similar type bills. There's a lot who support disability or specific disabilities, social justice issues. And so connecting with those legislators to talk about the issue and finding those legislative allies, it is possible, and I can say from personal experience, to get bills written and passed. So if that is something that you are, looking at doing, hopefully we'll have another training, hopefully in next year or so. And we'd love to have you. So to help prepare the next level of, or next round of advocates and hopefully leading up to writing legislation. So I'm going to turn it over to James, who has had really a great success with building relations to legislators and staff and some of the key takeaways on how he did it. James?
Thank you, Josie. Hello, everyone. As Josie said, my name is James Henderson. I am 36 years old, born with spina bifida, and graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology. I worked for many years, 15 years in the child care profession, starting with Easter Seals for the disabled, then worked in different public schools in Bucks County and Philadelphia for children of all ages for a before and after school program. And most recent job was working at Lowe's in customer service. So as you can see, I'm happy today to discuss with you building relationships, because all my life, in my social life and work life, I have learned to build relationships with people of all ages. I actually come here today to talk to you about my own experience with building a relationship with Senator Toomey's office. And it all started with my early training days in becoming a disability advocate, when one day Josie Badger invited all us advocates to join in on a call with Senator Toomey's office. I jumped at that opportunity, however, with little preparation. And in that time, I got myself ready, did my research, and was ready for the call. Shortly after the call, I sent an introductory email to the political staffer, thanking her, asking how she was, and also asking her for any updates to please follow up. From there, the emails grew. And I'm happy to tell you that in the end, my most recent conversation was on the phone with that political staffer, in hopes that in the next coming months, which looks very promising, that I will have a meeting with Senator Toomey himself. With the research I did and the contacting, the patience I had with each email, I didn't have to persevere for too long for every contact, because she was very quick in her responses. So now let's begin with more in depth with those steps that I took, that I created, that anyone can follow. Actually, building a relationship with anyone, in my opinion, does not require a lot of skill, but it does require patience, persistence, and perseverance. Even more so if you're trying to build a relationship with a legislator. Like a flower, that kind of relationship takes time to bloom, and if you don't stick with it, showing you're still there and care, it will die. While having a background in public speaking or knowing how to be persuasive can help, practice. Becoming more familiar with your story will help build a relationship, will make the bond more powerful. But enough with the P's. Before engaging someone in interaction, you'll want to do these things first. Research. In my experiences, when trying to build a relationship with a legislator, you do not start your interaction with the legislator. Yes, you can always reach out to them on social media or on their website, even call their office, but don't expect an answer directly from them. Now, in some cases, they may answer you or contact you, and depending on the situation, that answer may come sooner rather than later. But in the case of advocating, you'll want to start with the office. You'll want to get to know the people that work for the legislator, the staffers. But before you even begin to think about starting interaction with them, do your research on the legislator, as I had with Senator Toomey. Based on what you're advocating for, how do they stand? How does their party in general stand for what you support? Listen to how they speak in front of a podium. Get a sense of their personality. When they talk about the issues at hand and how they're fighting for or against them, how do they support their argument? How do they present data? Is it mostly presented by facts or numbers? Dig into their career. Were they ever a board member and or a co-sponsor, and of what? What legislation have they helped pass and what against? You don't have to look through everything. This is just based on what you think would be helpful in building a relationship with a legislator. You want to make note of key things to mention that will let the staffer know how serious you are, that you did your research. First contact. Your first contact is most important. And through my experience, it was an email to the staffer. Introduce yourself, say what you're advocating for, and tell your story in a brief manner. This is only an introductory email. By sending an email, you can take your time finalizing it before sending and making sure it's going to go into the right person. You can prepare yourself to be brief on the phone, but make a mistake or ramble on, you may lose the person's attention and their time may be limited. That's even if you get someone. So have patience. Political staffers have a full plate and then some. So again, don't expect a reply the next day or even that week. Patience is key. Persistence. With the number of legislators there are, if you're not getting anywhere with one legislator, then move on to another. In fact, research and contact multiple rather than one at a time. Here's another P word I didn't mention, personable. As the emails continue, be like their friend, adding something about the season or weather. You don't have to be advocate all the time. And finally, perseverance. In March 2013, I had the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. to speak with Congress on a separate matter. After being persistent and getting my point across without pestering with some patience, my efforts paid off. I persevered with the months it took, not knowing where things would go, because the final thing you have to do is never give up, quit your crying. Live by my motto, keep on trying. Thank you.
That was awesome, James. Such great information for those starting out. We're running a little bit on the end of time here. Christine, do you want to talk about the Family Care Act?
Yeah. The Family Care Act is a vital piece of the passage of the Family Care Act is a vital piece of legislation. It would allow someone going through a medical circumstance to take 12 to 18 weeks off to care for themselves or a loved one. With my experience growing up with cerebral palsy, I often had medical appointments that my parents had to take time off work for, which led to financial stress. If the Family Care Act was around when I was younger, it would have been helpful. And now that I am in the workplace myself, I still experience circumstances that I may have to take time off for. And with the Family Care Act, I wouldn't, if I was to have to go into surgery or have a unexpected medical circumstance, I wouldn't, with the Family Care Act, I wouldn't have to worry financially, and I'd be able to focus on my well-being, and it would relieve a lot of pressure. I know we're running out of time, so I just wanted to make that short and sweet, but I think the Family Care Act is a vital asset to make sure individuals feel financially secure when a medical circumstance was to occur.
Christine, that was perfect. I could not have said it better myself. So glad you took that. And you know, this is important. Once again, if you're a person with disability, you're a caregiver, you're a parent that's looking at fostering or adopting kids, this can help so many. And it can take that stress, as Christine said, off of family caregivers. And this was brought up in the questions. This right here would not only continue to protect your job, but the state would help provide a compensation for your time off. And that is so important. And this is what this is what Trail has been working to advocate for and on. And Representative Dan Miller is the second sponsor on this bill in the House. It is a state bill, and what we would ask you to do is contact your legislators to push it. Jess, would you mind wrapping up?
Absolutely. Thanks, Josie. So the call to action piece is continue to learn to be a self-advocate. We're learning and growing each day. Telling your story can empower someone. It can encourage larger conversations such as the one that we're having, and ultimately create change, because we can't expect everyone to know exactly what we're going through unless we tell them. And then just like Josie and Christine said, if you can support the Family Care Act, that'll help many families who have children or young adults that they are taking care of who have a disability or other health related issues maintain that employment. So contact your legislators and ask for them to sign on to that bill. Thank you.
Okay. Jess, thank you so much for bringing us all back together. So I hope that all of you have learned something from our amazing advocates, something about the bill, and something that you take away from this is that your voice is so important, and you can start now. You can start today and speak about advocacy. So I did not give you guys time for questions. However, maybe my Trail friends are willing to stick around if you do have any questions. So Representative Miller.
Yes. Thank you, Josie. And Thank you, everybody. I loved every moment of it. Yeah, we did run a bit long, but it wasn't because of poor content. It was great content. So thank you so much. We will try to wrap it a little bit here. We did have one general question, Josie. I'm gonna let one of you guys give your thoughts on this. Do you believe the government will start taking care of people that care for people on an economic scale, meaning put into law livable wages for workers that provide these services for individuals needing some type of physical, medical, or care? So do you think the government will start to treat those workers better or require?
I'm going to keep it short because I think maybe another trail member may have something, but this is the first time that both sides have been talking about the importance of caregivers. Both President Trump and Biden had these as issues that they wanted to talk about. And so in part because of COVID, we're realizing that our country's economy and success often is in the hands of underpaid, forgotten caregivers. So I do believe we're going to see improvements from both the state and federal level. But we need to be at the table speaking about this. What does it mean to be a caregiver? Who is a caregiver? Who's a family member? And so your voices need to be heard on those. Any other trail folk? Okay.
Well, you did answer it well. And look, I very much appreciate, again, all the fantastic, feedback and comments. Look, one of the things, obviously, that was talked about was talking with legislators. And I can't emphasize enough how important this is, no matter the issue, but just how important it is. I saw somebody ask, hope that legislators would be understanding with how people talk or think. I would say that overwhelmingly legislators intend to be, right? So we try to be, but it doesn't mean that we don't need your help sometimes as well. So on the issues of disability or mental health, while many legislators have some sort of family connection or something else, it doesn't mean that they personally have a broad range of knowledge on anything. And of course, so many diagnoses are so diverse in their impact and experiences anyhow. It's kind of like life, right? And just any other aspect of life. So that does sometimes make it, not as easy always to react the best way or use the best term. And so I think there's patience and understanding that needs to be done on both sides. That being said, of course, I always believe that legislators need to do more in this arena. It's one thing to talk, it's another way to vote. But there's a lot there. So, and I always tell this to people with it. I do appreciate that in the legislature, I got a degree of, people's thoughts. They go, well, that's a disability or mental health issue. Go talk to Miller or something. He's some sort of expert. And as Josie knows, of course, I'm not an expert on disability and mental health issues, but I do try. I do try my best. And but the experts are you. Are in particular self-advocates, and we need you to be those experts and to come educate myself, others about the impact of these decisions and how they can improve your lives, your opportunities, your families, everything along that lines. We need you to be as active in that arena as you can. So I'd encourage everybody, don't hesitate to reach out to your rep, your senator. Pay no attention to party affiliation. Get out there and tell them what is going on and what can make your life better. That being said, we are a couple minutes over. Again, I want to thank Josie and her entire fantastic panel for their discussions. We really appreciate it. We're down to our last two sessions at 4 o'clock. So you can choose from a classroom partner, a classroom discussions with a behavior analyst and mental health clinician starting at 4, of course, and then another one here on coughing and sneezing or tics, how COVID-19 made a difficult disability even worse. And in particular, I believe that will be on Tourette's. So 2 great sessions for you to pick from, starting at 4 o'clock. Thank you, Josie and everybody. We'll see you all in just under an hour.